concerns po yun, hindi na po sa DOH. Now, itong issues about that we've been seeing, I think yun, the resident auditor has already taken note at tinitingnan niya po rin yun. There's already been, of course, an audit for the year. And the main observation po na ginawa ng resident auditor was that there's really a problem with inventory management. Kasi po ang nangyari, a lot of these common use supplies, as they call it, no, were procured in April 2020 at a certain price range. Kaya lang nung by September of 2020, medyo nagbagsakan na po yung mga presyo. So the problem was they still had a lot of inventory in their warehouse na hindi nila na-dispose. Now meanwhile, itong mga regional offices, regional hospitals ng DOH, ayaw na kumuha sa PSDBM kasi sabi nila, napakamahal na nung sa inyo. We can just go across the street and buy it for 3-4 times less. No? So yun ang naging problema. It was an inventory management issue. And so the recommendations had to do with that. Although siguro we could also consider the fact na this is the first time we've had something like this. No? Pandemic talaga, medyo mahirap. But yun yung sabi nila, dapat meron kayong strategies on how to dispose of all these supplies and all that. Kasi nga, some of the agencies, and in fairness to these agencies, syempre, they want to get most value for money. So why buy a 27 peso mask if you can get it now for 5 or 10 pesos, diba? Yun ang naging issue doon. But I think the auditors looking at some of these issues that have been raised, I think in the Senate hearing po.
Would we expect, Chairman Mike, a report on the transactions of Pharmally, pharmaceutical, in the coming weeks so that we will be enlightened as to these purchases of this pandemic-required equipment and masks and so forth? Can we expect that from the COA after your resident auditor and PSDBM would submit to the commission in bank?
Yes, po, Mr. Chair. We'll ask the resident auditor to come out with his own study on the matter.
How long will that be, Chairman Mike? The public would want to know because you are the watchdog for all of these expenditures. So we should be able to, the public should be able to get your definitive audit report on these transactions of Pharmally pharmaceuticals.
Mahirap po mag-commit ng exact period, but I would say maybe a month would be a reasonable time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. So we will have that. And don't you believe that that's the problem? It is PSBBM buying it, Mr. Chairman. And if the DOH did the purchase, the bidding and everything, then the hospitals will have to get it because it comes from the DOH. Did you allow, would COA allow a budget under the GAA, which is given to the DOH, a definite agency and department, and that department will be able to move 42 billion out of its own budget to another agency? Is that the correct procedure to do?
Mr. Chair, yes, siguro medyo kakaiba rin yun dahil if you're talking about the size of the funds, no, medyo malaki talaga. I think in practice what happens is there are certain agencies that may be considered as having expertise in certain areas. No? So like PSDBM, yung isang expertise po nila would be purchase of common use supplies. No? Dahil most of national governments sa kanila kumukuha ng common use. And some of these items that were purchased had been classified as common use supplies by the GPPB in a resolution back in March 2020. Yun lang, ang laki rin kasi ng amount, so nakagulat. But the actual transfer, there has to be some kind of correlation. No? Dahil gaya nun, if common use supplies, parang it seemed to be acceptable to give it to PSDBM. No? Dahil yun ang ginagawa nila. In much in the same way that sometimes may mga construction na rather than the agency undertake it, pinapasa nila sa DPWH because yun ang expertise nila. Ganun po kami. If it's above a certain value, we'd rather have DPWH handle it kasi wala naman kaming competence to put up let's say a 500 million building, no? But maybe a 25 million or 30 million building pwede na siguro. So yun po. And yeah, the size is, of course, medyo kakaiba, 42 billion. And I think the observation of the auditor was, wala man lang documentation to support it. Yan yung ano. Of course, the defense of DOH was, sabi daw ng PSDBM sa kanila, hindi naman daw kailangan kasi common use supplies. But I think the auditor's point of view was that if the common use supplies are in stock, then you don't need the MOA kasi you're buying. But if they're not yet in stock, you're basically asking PSDBM to buy it for you. In which case, dapat may kontrata kayo. Kasi how do you establish yung mga service requirements, no? How soon will it be purchased, how soon will it be delivered, paano yung inspection, etc., etc. Yun po yung naging ano. And to the credit naman of Secretary Duque is, hindi na nila kino-contest yun, gumawa na ata sila ng MOA to at least document it.